from Martin, and he's talking about yeah, it's taking some time, right? So it's just starting a recording. I can be very slow. Anyways, so Martin is asking about crashing the software. Martin, this software is very helpful, very helpful, but essentially it's just automating certain steps that you could do yourself in Excel as well. So it's not what I would say a very sophisticated software. So if at all you've got any syntax errors, so it will crash. It will not give you any reason for that. It'll just crash. So just be careful in in calibrating data. So if the name of the condition that you put in and there's any error, it will just crash. So what I could do is I could run a demo later on today. So that, if anything that you're not doing correctly, I think I've got a video uploaded on YouTube as well, which you could could see and replicate the same steps. So I've also noticed that, if I'm a little bit less careful in terms of, putting in the information in the software, it just crashes and then I have to restart. So yeah, okay, good, Martin. Okay, excellent. Okay, now what I'll do is I will uh, I will talk a little bit about a few things that I've been experiencing, and then I'll share it with the rest of you, and then we'll open the session for discussion and any questions, any specific questions you've got. So Wahid, Wahid is a qualitative researcher, and I explained to him that the origins of QCA were qualitative, but now it's increasingly being used for quantitative studies, large sample studies, which has really made it very popular. There are many, it's now becoming a lot more common now. However, there are some issues with that. And in particular, the survey research, like the Likert scale research. So, and Martin mentioned that he's calibrating, and calibration is the most important step. So actually, whatever results you get is they depend upon the calibration rules that you chose. Now, when I first started doing this one, um, the calibration for survey research or quantitative data, I had there are two broad sets of approaches, and if you go and so I don't know what happened, right? Maybe somebody asked a question. Now, okay, or somebody wants to join in. Let me. I think somebody
Yeah,
wants.
I
Oh yeah.
already admitted Tina. So
Thank you, Sevala. If you could help me with that one, because
okay.
thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Okay, so yeah, so there are two approaches. Initially, and there are lots of papers that you could actually go. What they do is that whatever sample they've got, they obtain its statistical measures like mean, like median, and then they use that to calibrate the data. So the most common, what is calibration is whatever type of data that you have got, you will calibrate it from 0 to 1. And all the conditions and all the outcome would be consistent from 0 to 1. That's what the calibration rules work. That's how they work. Now, when I first started doing it, I followed those studies. I chose a median or mean and performed my analysis for that one. It gave me results. I submitted it somewhere, and then I got a rejection. Somebody they sent it to somebody who was good. Actually, I suggested his name. And then and what his argument was that if you use the sample characteristics to calibrate your data, then you cannot generalize your findings to beyond your sample. So that's what they said. And I sort of know in hindsight, I agree as well. And then I went and consulted literature. So there are two. So the most cited calibration guideline that people use is Crackhammer 2018, best practices in QCA. And what he says is, quote unquote, and I've got that with me here, so I'll read it for you. Um, so his principle is, what he says is that effective calibration is half conceptual, half empirical process of identifying thresholds that meaningfully represent differences in kind and differences in degree. So this differences in kind and differences in degree are critical. You know what we want to do, as Wahid was talking, we have to first differentiate the extent, like the extent of implementation of a practice. That's the Likert scale. We have to have that, what we call as differences in degree. And the second one is differences in kind. We have to differentiate between different cases, right? So that's what is the guiding principle. And when he says half conceptual and half empirical, what he means is that we should we should prioritize the use of conceptual um, principles, because they'll help us to generalize our findings beyond our sample. So the key principles, or the key rules that we can follow for conceptual calibration principles are, you know just use the Likert scale. What Likert scale uses is like 1 to 5 or 1 to 7. We have got the midpoint, which is the and natural point from which the disagree or agree gets differentiated. We can use that as the um, point, as our crossover point. Crossover point is where it's based on set membership, um, less than the crossover point, so it's more out than in. If it's more than the crossover points, more in than out. So mainly thing is the selection of the crossover point. So 1, 5, 7, 1, 3, 5, and you choose the midpoint. So that's now being accepted as that's the Likert scale. The midpoint of the Likert scale now is being considered as more acceptable way of calibrating Likert scale data.
So can I ask if
Yeah,
you using 7-point Likert scale, so there will be 3.5?
the midpoint. So look, Sivalai, the midpoint in a Likert scale, instead of just arithmetic midpoint or mean, we need to think in terms of uh, the linguistic description around the Likert scales. So
So in that case, if it's 5-point scale would be 2.5, and if it's 7, it's 3.5. Is that what
no, no,
it is? Very simple like that.
no, it's not. It's a little bit different, Sivalai. So these numbers, when we ask questions, we ask survey questions to respondent, they do not see these numbers. What they see is agree or disagree, neither agree, neither disagree. So if we just look at the linguistic descriptions of the Likert scale that our respondent sees, so for him, the crossover point, whether neither lies here, neither lies there, is the midpoint of, like, if it's a neither agree, neither disagree, is 3 in a 1 to 5 Likert scale. If it's 1 to 7 Likert scale, it's 4. So that's the midpoint, and that should be the crossover point. Now there is debate around whether we it, sh it should be 1, 4, 7 or 1 or 2, 4, 6, because if something is already disagree, so we don't wait for strongly disagree. We say, okay, this is already out. So that we can play around and see how our data responds. But the midpoint is the linguistic descriptor that that captures somebody's response in terms of neither in, neither out, neither agree, neither disagree. Sivalai, that answers your question? Okay. So that's one way of doing, and that's probably is a more thorough way of doing this thing, so you can avoid this thing of a criticism from reviewers that your findings cannot be generalized to larger population. That's Likert scale data. Now, recently I'm doing a study where I also use archival data or objective data, which is quantitative data, but it is not based on perception or not on Likert scale, like return on asset, like solvency ratio, like asset turnover ratio, like ratio scale. So again, the challenge here, if one easier way is that I take my sample, and when I take my sample, I get its mean. Mean could be, or median could be, the crossover point, and then calibrate accordingly. However, what I and the best practices, like some of the papers that I've seen published in Academy of Management Journal that have used FSQCA, what they do is they try to obtain um, so remember, we've got sample, and then sample represents a population. So there can be opportunities where you are able to get the median or mean for the population itself, which I've been able to. So in this case, I was a bit fortunate. I give you a more detailed example here. And Martin is sitting here, so so it's a joint project with Martin's supervisor. We had collected data from all manufacturing companies that were our population of interest in Sweden, and we were able to obtain 250 manufacturing companies representing different NACE codes. Now we've got their return on asset with us. We've got this Likert scale data as well. Now, if I wanted to use a crossover point beyond the sample, one option which has been used elsewhere is, and I'm modeling my study on that, is that I went to the same NACE codes. So we had about 300 to 50 companies, and all the companies that form that NACE codes, like manufacturing and rubber manufacturing and tire manufacturing and all those sorts of things. And then there were about 6,000, 8,000 companies. I downloaded that data through Orbis, which we have access to here through Swedbank, and other universities would have access to that one as well, and get their return on asset for the last year, get their solvency ratio data for the last year, get their asset turnover data for the last year, and then get their median, get their standard deviation, and use that to calibrate your data. So in that case, what we could do is we can justify our calibration principles being applicable beyond our sample as well. So that's one way uh, to take care of future potential criticism for your reviewers. Any questions that we have got at this stage? Thanks.
But most of my data are survey data. So then I have to then use the midpoint of the scale, isn't it? But if someone like you were able to use the secondary data, so then you can get it, downloaded it, and then extract the value, and then
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
So with Likert scale, you don't, that's it. Likert scale, you already have, um, you can use a crossover point that is external to your sample. So the Likert scale value is external to your sample. That's not a sample characteristic. So in that case, as you very rightly mentioned, you could make a case for, or that's already, that's accepted. You could find plenty of literature or all the best practices where they say, it's you call it a conceptual calibration principles, which are external to the sample characteristics. So absolutely correct.
Is there a situation in which you get the number from previous study in your area, and can you compare to that number?
Very good question, Sibalai, and I should have mentioned that. So the general principles are, as Craig Hammer 2018 says, and anybody with the study that I'm referring to, you could go have a look on my profile, and my last FSQCA study published in Industrial Marketing Management actually describes all these things, right? So you can get references to what I'm talking from those. So just to bring what I've mentioned so far and what Civilized mentioned together, is key principle is that we should use substantive knowledge um, or conceptual knowledge to calibrate our data. That's our principle. illustration of that substantive knowledge or conceptual knowledge external to our data. Examples could be Likert scale for survey research, could be, the population characteristics. That's in case if you can get access to that one. And the third one is substantive knowledge. If for whatever reason you cannot get access um, to population characteristics, you just cannot. In those cases, what you could do is you could go to past studies and they had similar sort of data, similar sort of characteristics, and they used a calibration principle, and you can cite that one as a justification. So again, that's based on substantive knowledge. So summarizing civilized point and what I've said so far is it's simply substantive conceptual principles external to our sample. That's our first preference. And as Greg Hammer mentioned, if for whatever reason we cannot get conceptual or substantive knowledge-based calibration principle resolve our or help us in our analysis, then we can go for empirical things, empirical based calibration rules, but that should be our last resort, and we should very clearly explain why we were constrained to opt for the last resort and why not the preferred method. So we should give a justification for that. In my study, I ended up using median because I showed them, and I actually gave them the in appendix, I gave them these questions were put to me, and I gave and explained to them, look, I tried my best, but the conceptual characteristics or conceptual calibration principles did not yield the results, or the results were not good, and then I had to use for this one. Okay, good. Any questions on calibration principles so far?
I'm Dr. Akhtar from India.
Welcome, Dr. Akhtar.
Yeah, I have read few papers, but it's still.
Okay, go on.
I have read few papers, but it's still not very clear how to calibrate from the survey data. Like you said that we have got a survey data on Likert scale. So how to convert it? How to do calibration? Somebody can explain. Practically how to do it.
Okay, I'll do it for you right now, and probably I think it's a good opportunity. I'll share my screen and I'll do it for you. I think I've got somebody who would want to join this session. I'll call them. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll run, and that probably answers Martin's question as well. So what I'll do is I'll share my screen, and then, okay. So you can see this. I'm in the QCA bookshop. So what you see here, probably you're seeing. So this is the appendix that I was talking about. This is my industrial marketing management paper. You could, if you would be able to see that in my Google Scholar profile 2022, and it has an online supplement. If you can access that through your university subscription, very good. If you cannot, I can send that to you. So I'm here talking about conceptual calibration principles. So I explain them different truth table, and after that I talk about that, look, nothing is working, and this one is giving me the best results, the median principle that I use. So this is what I did, right? Now, in response to Dr. Akhtar's question here, so what I've got is the FSQCA 3.0 software. What I'll do is I will open this one here, and it just takes the CSV files, and I've placed some CSV. Look, you could be able to see that I've been practicing with different calibration rules. So QC is a very iterative process, right? So it's not just take one, and you need to see what sort of results are you obtaining, and then you go back and recalibrate. So what I'll do is I'll open a CSV file here, and I've got the IDs with me, and these are the variables. So I'll just do one calibration, and this is you can see that this is the 7-point Likert scale data here. So what I've done here is I've averaged out multiple questions for one theoretical construct. For example, this SCV that you see here is supply chain visibility. So it had 4 or 3 questions, and I averaged that in SPSS. And
No,
each
is it an average of all the respondents? This 4.5
is the average of all
no, suppose
survey questions.
we have taken a survey from, let us say, 250 people. So each question has been answered by you, and each question responds to some variables, no?
Yes,
Where we
yes,
call it here, uh, what we call indicators.
yes,
So
yes.
how these values they are derived? They're 4.5, 2.5, and 3 and 4.
So, Dr. Akhtar, supply chain visibility is a latent construct that's
Yes.
being measured by 3 questions,
Yeah.
right? So this 4.5 is the average of those 3 questions.
Okay.
It's the average of those 3 questions, right?
But
So what we have done
3%,
is
3%, or we have taken a survey of, let us say, 250 persons, like we do in the SEM. So will not it be a average of 250 persons?
no, it will not be. So what you see is just, so these ID represents different people.
Okay,
So these
okay,
are the 200 people. So this is
okay,
1% response of 3 questions for a latent
okay,
construct is now
okay,
converted into an observed variable
okay,
as a single value for one respondent.
okay. Then that will be take average of 3 questions related to a particular latent
Construct.
variable.
Yep.
Okay, correct.
Okay.
Okay,
Now, when you go here, and so once you've done this one, now I want to calibrate this one, right? So what I'll do is I go to compute, and this is the calibrate function. I think I have to double check, but it's very simple here. You click one of the things that I want, like let's do SCV, right? And I name it SCV calibrate, right? And so this is X is the SCV here, and 1 is so, and calibration, we need to have 3 values or 3 thresholds. Lower where the all values are out of the set, the highest where 95% somebody is, that's the maximum threshold of the in or the values that belong in a set, and then the threshold. So we have to put in 3 values that we use to calibrate our data. So in this case, because as I mentioned to you, we are using 7-point Likert scale. So it's 7 is the highest value. And then we are using 4 the midpoint, 4,
3,
and 3 is 1,
1.
right? 7 for 1. And now let's see, this SCV is 4.5. Let's calibrate and see what do we get here. So it shows that we have done the calibration. So it's 4.5. It should be slightly more than 0.51. Let's check, right? Let's go to the last value here. Yeah, it's 0.062. That's 0. Like corresponding to 4.5. So what we've done is we have converted a Likert scale data based on a calibration principle of 4 being a crossover point, 7 being the maximum value for the input, and then 1 as the lower threshold, 7 for 1. And then based on this, what we have done is we've calibrated all 7-point Likert data into a scale
I
from
got
0
it.
to 1.
Okay, I got it. So similarly for other variables, it has to be done for each variables.
For each variable, everything has to be between 0 to 1. All calibration from outcome and also from the
So,
for the causal
so,
conditions as well.
so the number of variables, whatever we have taken the study, maybe 10, 15, or for all the variables, it has to be taken.
Yes. The calibration is everything has to be calibrated.
Okay, good.
Okay, good.
Okay, proceed.
Thank you very much. Others, do you have any question here, Martin and others?
Yes, sir. Sir, I have one question. I'm Tina from India. Hello.
Yes, Tina, I can hear you.
Sir, I have shared my data with you. Have you seen my data?
Oh, no. I don't think I don't have access to that data at the moment. But yeah, that's fine.
Actually,
You can.
sir, in my data, I have scored 50 companies from 0 to 1. 4-point scale was developed like 0, 0.33, and 0.66, and 1. And I scored all 50 companies for the different question responses, and I applied the test, but my results were very odd. And this Likert scale data that you are showing over here, and the process of calibration you are showing over here, actually is not working on my data. So I have to ask questions from my own data. If you
Okay.
have the file,
Tina, let's go slowly, right? Let's go slowly. So what I understand from you is that the calibration principle that you chose, and from my understanding of what you mentioned here, you choose 0, 0.33, 0.66, and 1, and probably you had 4. So you convert those
point
4
scale.
points. Yes, yes. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Why did you choose this one?
So actually, two assistant professors are also working on this. Actually, the scale was developed by those professors, and I worked. I just scored the scale, and the scale was developed by the professors. They actually the proper stepwise procedure are followed to develop the scale. 0.0 is given to those responses which were not up to the expectation. 0.33 given.
So
I think the fuzzy scale they have used.
Yeah. And one like score 1 is given to those responses which have given exactly full information to the questions that we asked.
Okay, okay, Martin, I've noted your question. Remind me later on. That's an important question that I wanted to talk about. But let's now try to answer Tina's question. Tina, look, the rule is simple, and I have experience, and I do experience that all the time. It's not that you should only use one calibration principle. So it's an iterative process. If one calibration principle does not work, that means it's not for your data. And as I was talking earlier, key thing is which calibration principles are you using? So there's nothing written in stone. As I mentioned to you, and the Greg-Hammer principle that's most widely used, he says that it should be half conceptual and half empirical. And it's an iterative process. And you should only use that calibration principle that gives you both. The principle says differences in degree and differences in kind. Differences in degree is what is like one respondent would rate a question or indicator variable on 0.6, 1 0.7. So there should be a variation in terms of the extent of implementation of a practice or whatever your question is. That's what we call it, differences in degree. Another one should be differences in kind, that some of your questions or some of your conditions should contribute to a positive outcome. Some of your conditions should contribute to a negative outcome. This is what we call differences in kind. So both if you cannot obtain these two, then you need to go and change your calibration principles. It's as simple as that. So it's not your data, it's you need to practice different calibration principles. This is what I believe.
I think, sir, if we score our data, whether it is survey or primary data or responses of different questions, we have to score from 0 to 100 or 0 to 10. If we are scoring the responses 0 to 10, then calibration process is successful. If we are scoring different responses from 0 to 1, then their problem arises and results get deviated as we expected.
So another thing that one of my colleagues
And
mentioned
there,
here.
if I try directly the test on my data from 0 to 1 scale, then there were tied implicants problems in the results. Tied implicates.
What I would suggest, Tina, here is that the similar studies that you would be basing your your research would be based on prior literature. See what type of scales did they use, and then that information can help you try some other calibration principles as well. And this is what we refer to as substantive knowledge. So if your default or your preferred calibration principle is not giving you enough variation in your data, then that calibration principle, you should jettison that. You should stop using that one. You should explore others one and document that. And if somebody asks, why haven't you done that? You show them, you should have truth table for corresponding to all the calibration principles that you have practiced. And you can show it to your potential reviewers or your thesis examiner that, look, I've tried this calibration principle and it gave me this truth table, which, as you mentioned, does not give me enough. I show you example. I think I showed you.
I can share my screen if you want to see over here.
Sure. Share your screen. Absolutely good.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
In her case, she can try for calibration using the value 0.33 once, and if it is not giving the good result, she can use 0.66, because she has calibrated 4 answers: 0, 0.33, 0.66, and 1. So we cannot have a midpoint here, but at least we can use 0.33 or 0.66. That may give some calibration useful, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's, you should try whatever. So if you cannot get appropriate or differences in kind and differences in degree in her post calibrated data, then different calibration rules should be experimented. That's the only way forward. While Tina is setting her thing up, an important point Martin has raised, and I should talk about this one. You normally don't get that one. Is, look, we just calibrated our data, and I think I'll again share my screen, and then I will talk about that one. Okay, so this is, we just calibrated our data here. So sometimes what happens is we are just, just going back here. We've got this supply chain with SCV variable, which was 4.5, and this along with different respondents here. We go
so can
here.
You see my? I have shared my screen, sir.
Okay, now, okay, fine. Okay, fine. Yes, go on.
These are the 50 companies in first column. Can you see, sir? First column A.
I can, yeah, go on.
These are the 50 companies, and in first row, different type of questions are asked. Under there are total 9 questions, and under each principle, like P1, there are few questions. Like from
Can I have a look on
P1
the
to
questions? Can I have a look on the questions? Because that is more important than these numbers. What are the questions?
I can.
The questions are the more important because that can help us come up with.
Can you see my
Yes, see, what's the question here? What's the question?
Like question number 1 under principle 1. Does the policy related to ethics, bribery, corruption cover only the company? Yes or no? Does it extend to the group, joint venture, supplier, contractor, NGO, etc.? And question number 2. Can you see my
question number 1? Question number 1. So please.
Sir, I have can you see my this sheet of questions?
I'm seeing that. Yeah. So is it yes or no? Yes or no is not fuzzy. It's like
Sir, this is my scale from C to F. Fully out, more out than in, more in than out, in. And this is the part of my scale. And on the basis of this scale, I scored different companies.
Tina, look
over here, like this way.
What the respondent saw. So the key important thing is what the respondent was seeing in the questions. So what did they answer to?
So Actually, I read the answer, and on the basis of the quality of the answer, I scored different responses. Like the question asked from Axis Bank, if they have responded like policy covered the ethics, bribery, corruption, and this policy is applied to not only group but joint venture partners, vendors fully. They have responses are part of questions. It means they are given one, and like BPCL, we have given only 0.33 because they are covering their policy only their company, not the policy extends to the group's joint venture, supplier, contractor. So we gave them 0.33.
So look, this is probably the issue here, right?
And
Because
yeah,
I get your point,
actually,
Tina. What you need to do is, I think the
and
lack
this
of
is the
look,
from
Tina. I think the issue with your data is that you haven't followed substantive knowledge to calibrate your data. So it needs to be more formally being done. You need to consult similar. It's to me it appears that it's not like the differences that you're identifying across different questions. They're not captured in a similar way. So it's not very. So yeah, so it's when you say that you can, so these four questions were are sort of different scale. The others are somewhat appears different scale, and you're using your judgment, right? 0.33, which is not the best practice. You need to use substantive knowledge to calibrate your data. So read the questions, and those questions, other studies that have used similar questions, you need to borrow from them what their approach has been, not what your assumption at that point in time. It's need to be backed up with more evidence rather than your intuition.
okay, sir.
So consult similar studies who have used similar questions and based your calibration principle. So apparently you've got the numbers, right? You've got a post calibration numbers, but they are not resulting in the type of an output that can give you meaningful understanding of the variations across different cases or within each case as well. So that is an issue. So in that case, you need to, and to me, whatever you've described to me so far, it appears that this is lack of theoretical grounding of your calibration principles. That's the most important thing. Otherwise, if you cannot justify the choice of calibration principle, then the chances of your paper getting accepted by the informed reviewers are limited. This is what I believe. Okay, you need to consult similar studies who have used similar scales and how they have calibrated. That's my advice at the moment. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Can I have one point. Can
Yes.
is instead of she is using 0.33, 0.66 or 1, she can 1, 2, 3, 4 like look at a scale of 1 to 4. She can use and see if what that is giving the result. Because there
Probably.
is four options she has taken. So she can use the option like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then try to see the what you call calibration, making 2 as a midpoint, and then trying to calibrate, see what it comes out to be as just an experimentation.
You know, that's a good point. That's a good point. And just to add to what Dr. Akhtar mentioned here, my suggestion, Tina, and it's a very, very important suggestion. I cannot emphasize it enough. You do not see it from the numbers that you've got. You see it from the perspective of the one who's reading your survey questions. So how he responds, right? So the verbal description of the question should guide your calibration, not the other way around. Okay, so that's an important, and you can consult different approaches and come back to me later on. Okay, Tina?
Okay, okay,
Okay,
sir.
thank you. Okay, one question that Martin had, and it would benefit everyone who is attending here, is I'll just again share my screen. Okay, so when you calibrate the data, and I was talking, so what we did earlier, I showed you how to calibrate the data. is we've got this supply chain visibility construct, Likert scale, 4.5 average value for 3 questions. We go here, we calibrate it, we get 0.62. So that's fine, right? But sometimes what we may get is that the calibrated value that we've got here is exactly 0.50. If the calibrated value is exactly 0.50, and then later on when you use it for truth table generation, what happens is that 0.50 value neither belongs or neither out of a set, neither in a set. It's on the boundary. So it's not captured in the truth table analysis. In that case, once you have calibrated your data, you can save it as an Excel file, have a look on all the calibrated values that are precisely 0.50. If they're precisely 0.50, what you should do is you should add a 0.001. So it becomes 0.5001. So it goes away from that right at the center of neither in, neither out. In that case, your truth table would have all the cases. Otherwise, when you generate a truth table for the cases or responses which are precisely 0.50, they won't appear in your further analysis. So that's something that you normally do not come across in studies. They don't report on that, but that's what would happen. So how does it use? How do you see that in your analysis? Is you had 200 responses. You generated the truth table, and after the truth table, you observe that you got only 180 responses. And then you say, why? I had initially, so my FSQCA, I'm putting in 200 responses, but I'm just getting 180 in my truth table output. So what happens is those 20 are those responses that are exactly 0.50, and they wouldn't become part of your truth table. So in order for them to be part of your analysis, you manually add 0.001, which doesn't change anything. I have actually checked that myself. So 0.50 would become 0.5001. So that would become part of your truth table. Martin, that was your question, right?
One second. Is it because that's no more a member?
Yes,
Because
that's
below 5
neither
it
in,
becomes out
neither
of
out.
membership.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so it should be part of the membership of the function.
Yep. So that's why. And this is something that hardly any paper reports. This is
Yes,
something.
actually, these practical aspects is very much needed, because reading many papers, I mean, these are some of the practicalities they are missing there.
Okay, okay. Thanks, Ray. Thank you very much for attending. Pass my regards to Emma and Martin. I hope this answers your question, right? All good. Any further thing on that one?
Next step, can you a little bit cover about how to form a truth table from here, like calibration scale we have come up.
Okay,
Now, next step,
I can show that to you. That's
please.
probably while we are here,
Please.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me do an analysis. Let's go. So first thing, once you've calibrated the data, you go to truth table, right? So in my case, the outcome variable is return on asset, which I set like this one. It goes in here. And then I run it like supply chain visibility. I'm just random. No, I have to add the calibrated data, which is this one. No, I just reset that one. And I just return on asset is my, and everything else I've already calibrated. So what I'll do is I will add this one. I would also add this one. I would also add, I'm putting in four causal conditions, and there's one outcome of interest. And then I generate the truth table, which I have just generated. So, this doesn't look nice, right? This raw consistency, there's some problem with the data. So let me not randomly use some information. So let me run it again. Truth table information. Let me run through this one. Okay. So return on asset is my, oh no, yes, no, I should use the calibrated one. Yeah. I wasn't using the calibrated one. So it should be the calibrated one. Now I should use all the calibration information. So this is what so return on asset previously was uncalibrated, which I put as the outcome variable. Everything should be calibrated, otherwise your results wouldn't be good. So now I run it. So now you could see previously these were more than one, which shouldn't be the case because now we have calibrated everything between 0 to 1. So all our responses should be 0 to 1. What you see here is different combinations. So a QCA works with combination. These are the four causal conditions, and these are different combinations. 2 raised to power 4 is 16 combinations. So these should be 65. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the 16 rows. Each correspond to a specific combination of these causal conditions, and these 60 cases represent this combination, 40 cases or responses represent this combination, and so on. Some cases, like in this case, all the responses are being allocated to each of the uh, configuration of causal condition. We call that as a configuration of causal condition because 4 causal conditions are part of this configuration. 0 means that the absence of that variable, and 1 means presence of that variable. And raw consistency, the degree of membership in each configuration of the cases, that's the first step in the truth table generation. The next one is that we say to our...
One second. What is the next column? The second column, the raw consistency thereafter?
There's something called PRI consistency column.
So how it is different from the raw consistency?
So raw consistency is the basic measure.
Yeah.
PRI consistency is a more sophisticated measure. And the paper that I was referring to that I sent to you as well, Dr. Akhtar, that explains the difference between PRI and raw consistency. So what happens is that normally when we do QC analysis, we run it for both for the high outcome and low outcome, because QCA deals with equifinality. It doesn't assume equifinality. It says that, if presence of an outcome results, a presence of a condition results in presence of an outcome, not necessarily absence of that condition would result in the absence of that outcome, right? Causal asymmetry, that's another thing along with equifinality. So what we do is we run our QC analysis for both high ROI, in this case, high financial performance, and also run it for low financial performance. Now, in that case, a configuration, for example, this configuration, let me run it for you, and then you will. So what it does is now it's telling me if it's 0, that's our financial performance. That means that this configuration is not part of or does not contribute to return on asset. Now that's an analysis for high financial performance. We run a similar analysis for low financial performance. Now, logic says that a condition that's part of high financial performance or group of conditions should not be part of or should not contribute to low financial performance, because same condition can neither be present, cannot be present at the same time for both high performance and low performance. And how do we know that it's happening? If the PRI score are less than 0.50, then that's a red flag. That shows to us that this configuration may have simultaneous membership in both high outcome and low outcome. So PRI is an extra check that tells that our data is consistent, right? We are not saying that these two conditions contribute to superior financial performance and also low financial performance. That is not logically possible. And how do we know that? The PRI consistency tells us. Does that, it's high stuff. It's like, it's deep.
Good. What about the third column? Third column
third is what we call symmetric consistency. That's a refined version of PRI consistency, but it has it's an output that the software generates, but it's not normally reported. These two are the one. Previously they used to just report this one. Now they're asking about PRI consistency, because if PRI consistency is low, that means there is problem, and you need to justify. And you could the further explanations and with specific references in the paper that I sent you, you could find those as well. Symmetric consistency is another refinement of this one, right? But very little, not much difference. You could find big differences here, but this is just a variation of this PRI consistency. But yeah, these two are the main ones. Okay.
In the previous screen, there was some numbers and the percentage. What does percentage indicate? I mean, just
the percentage. Yeah. So the numbers were. I'll do it again for you. Now let me do the reverse of this one. Okay, let me do this one again. I think I got this one. I run it now. So this is what you refer to, right?
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, right, these are different combinations, 16 combinations that we can think of 4 causal conditions. And each of these, so the responses that we have got, they would correspond to any of these combinations. So what we see here is 60 responses, or 60 responses or cases are show this configuration pattern. Remaining 40 show this. So your total sample would fall under this one. Your total sample would be shown here.
But against the 60, there is 25%. What does it mean?
So 60 divided by 200 total sample. Okay. 60 divided by total sample. I think I've got 240 something response. So 60 divided by 240, 245 would be about 25%.
Okay. Got it.
So this is corresponding to the total sample size, right? Or total cases, as they call it. Okay. So now next step is we code this one.
One more question related to this. You talked about there is a one outcome variable you have taken. Suppose a particular study has got a more than one outcome, like there are one outcome, more than one outcome, 2, 3. Then how we are going to analyze that?
Yeah, this is something that I have also tried to find answer to, and now my considered view upon this one is that at one point in time you run FSQCA analysis for one outcome variable, and then you perform a separate analysis for the second outcome.
Means that the procedure should be repeated for the
second,
outcome 1, outcome 2, outcome 3.
Yep. This is what
Sir, in the sheet that you were sharing over here, 60 divided by 200 is not 25%. It's more than 30%.
240.
So yeah, generally that's the principle, Tina. This is what I'm sure this is it, right? But I'm not 100% sure how many input samples in this particular case was. But what I'm telling you is for sure truth. So whatever you see, okay, what you could do is probably use 60 and you sum all this together and then divide 60 by this total sum, you'll get this 25%. That's I'm pretty sure of, right?
Okay.
So I just gave you an example, rough example. But this is for sure 60 plus 40, add this all together and then divide 60 by the number sum of everything, you should get 25%. I'm pretty sure about this. Okay. Okay, last couple of minutes, any concluding remark, because I've got something else at 5 o'clock as well. So got any questions, anything else that you would want to talk about? Happy to answer here. Thank you.
You're going to talk about truth table.
Yeah, we're short of time, but Dr. Akhtar, the video that I sent you actually does everything. I'm actually repeating the information here. So have a look on the video that explains. Probably if probably you may be looking at a wrong video if that is the case, but I can send you that one again. It's on YouTube, and it's the whole thing that I've done it runs the truth table. And this session was for 1 hour, and we have to finish now.
Okay. Please send me the link. I'll again read, and if there is anything again needs explanation, I'll come back to you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much for your.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Very
Thank
nice
you, Tina.
session.
Thank you very much.
Nice session, very informative, and it was a learning experience.
Thank you very much.
Sir, please share the calibration rules PDF with me.
Okay, I'll share that with you. Thank you, Tina. I'll share that.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we'll meet inshallah next month
Thank
on
you.
the last
Thank
Thursday. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks. Ochola, thank you.